Hello learners and viewers, welcome to this session. Today's topic is Gender Resources and Entitlements. I am the course coordinator for this course MGSE 006. This topic is part of the course Gender Resources and Entitlements. Learning outcome of this session is to discuss gender issues and needs in the agricultural sector. We need to analyze the mainstreaming gender in the agricultural sector and to describe the linkages between environment, gender and the differences in gender impact of environmental risk. These are the three broad learning outcomes in today's sessions. By keeping this in my mind, I have prepared this lecture. If you listen carefully in this lecture, you could be able to relate this lecture with the course MGSE 006, that is Gender Resources and Entitlements, as well as MGSE 004. That course specifically it talks about the gender issues in agriculture and other related primary sectors. Let us see what is the how much the women they could play a significant role in the agriculture. Why do we need to talk about women's role in the agriculture? We all know that women have played a very significant role in the agriculture, and they take up the wide range of activities including food production, as well as they could able to process the whatever food they have produced, and they could process those food, and some of them they actively involved in marketing of the whatever the productions they do from the agricultural activities. As well as the women, we all know that they actively participate in the land management as well as water management. As far as agricultural activities are concerned, the women they start the work from sowing of the seeds as well as harvesting the crop. They also actively participate in the weeding of the unwanted plants in the field. When you look into the women's contribution in the post-harvest activities, they could able to add value to the whatever agricultural products. The harvested products has to be value added, and it could easily sell in the market. So the women actively participate in adding value to the agricultural products, but still they are contributing for the wide range of activities as far as agriculture is concerned. Here we need to ask one significant question, that is whether the resources related to agricultural activities, whether it's a land, water as well as agricultural equipments, do they able to control those resources? That is the first question. As when we talk about the land, is the land is in their women's name? If it's not women's name, even if they extensively participate in agricultural activities, if they don't have control over the resources, what happened is that it is not possible for them to generate resources to do the agricultural activities. If they don't control over the resources, then it's very difficult to take any decisions related to agriculture. Thus, due to these gender inequalities in the society, women lack ownership, they lack access and control over resources, as well as they lack decision making. That's what scientists as well as the feminists who are closely working with the agricultural sectors, they come to the conclusion. Thus, the feminization of agriculture, gender biases in agriculture as well as rural development it's a global concern. It's not about in India. It's a global concern. Wherever you look into the studies related to gender and agriculture, you could able to see that there is a gender differences in agricultural sector. The modernization of agriculture and other sectors, if you look into that, it directly affected the subsistence activities formerly undertaken by the women. As a learner of the gender and development studies, you all know that what is subsistence activities. Thus, what happened is that since the subsistence activities has reduced over a period of time, the better paid jobs and mechanization of agricultural sector as well as resources mostly thus controlled by the male members in specifically if you look into the agricultural sector, the better paid jobs involving new technology will be controlled by the male members in the society. Thus, the modernization of agriculture also has altered the labor division between sexes, increasing the women highly depend. They are mostly their workload has been increased. At the same time that their status and position as far as primary sector is concerned, it has been reduced so much. This we could able to understand from the study conducted by the Esther Boschrup in African agricultural pattern. This Esther Boschrup thesis has been explained in the course 1 itself. In the beginning of the course program, the course 1 itself we have explained in the Esther Boschrup's thesis. Thus, I have not explained much about it, but basically Esther Boschrup explained that the modernization has altered the women's labor on the African agricultural pattern, as well as the modernization has not valued the women's contribution in the agricultural sectors. And we all know that women are most often the collectors of water, firewood and fodder. They have also very much access to local knowledge on medicinal plants that is used for to address various diseases. They have been engaged in soil conservation program, as well as they perform most of the works related to milch animals. These kind of variety of activities, the women they contribute for the agricultural sector. In spite of contributing so much to the agricultural sector, still lack of valuation of women's work in agriculture is a very significant issue. With the changing pattern of agricultural activities as well as mechanization, what do we think that if there is a mechanization of particular sector, certainly we think that will reduce the drudgery of the women, but it did not happen as far as agricultural sector is concerned. This mechanization has increased workload of the women. Significantly, this mechanization has affected small and marginal farmers. Who are all small and marginal farmers? Mostly the women are the small and marginal farmers. One study clearly pointed out in the state of Bihar. If you look at that, whichever the locations we take it, if some location is highly prone to disaster, what happens is that due to the lack of education, due to the lack of skills, and if male members mostly they migrate into cities in search of better positions. Even though if they are not skilled also, if they are not educated also, they may migrate to cities to join in the informal sector. Thus, the entire workload to take care of the agricultural activities as well as to do the productive activities and reproductive activities will be in the hands of the female members in the society. Yes, we have an industrialization. Industrializations altered the entire agricultural sector. Still, the women have more labor-intensive farm activities such as weeding and harvesting. As well as if you look at the industrializations, there is a change in the ownership, and most of the time the ownership has changed from male members to other male members. The women may not be able to control the land resources. Still, there is a lack of gender sensitive labor laws to facilitate the women to take appropriate decisions. Thus, if you look at the Indian agricultural sector, it has not addressed the most of the issues confronted by women in the agricultural sector, specifically in Indian agricultural sector. The important role played by the women in agriculture was in the past largely ignored in government statistics and decision making. There has been some changes in the situations. Now women and the government has started recognizing the women's role in the agricultural activities, and they have started giving importance to the women. Thus, due to the various studies, and they have clearly pointed out the women's role in the agricultural activities and their contribution in the agricultural sector. After realizing the women's contribution in the agricultural sector, the present government could be able to take certain measures to recognize their contribution based on on their recognition, specifically women's recognition in the agricultural sector, the government could able to formulate very certain policies, and also they could able to mobilize the women farmers as a self-help groups, and they tried to, through the self-help group movement, they could able to generate certain financial resources to expand their agricultural activities. What is gender differences in work and activities? This we need to understand that, as we all know that the women, they do three types of activities predominantly. One is the reproductive role they perform, another one is the productive role they perform, and community management role. And the productive role, as far as concerned, it is related to market production as well as subsistence activities, that we all know that women, they do contribute for subsistence production as well as the market activities. Reproductive role concerns childbearing, child rearing responsibilities borne by the women. As far as community management role is concerned, the activities undertaken by women to ensure the provision of resources at the community level as an extension of their reproductive role. These are the major three activities women, they were performing. As I have mentioned in the beginning of my lecture, with the migration to the cities of the developing world gathering speed, I have mentioned in the beginning that about the male migration. Even due to the rapid migration from rural to urban areas, the women, they do migrate to urban areas in search of better opportunities. When the women migrate to urban areas, they carry with them these rural skills, and they are the responsible for the growth of urban and peri-urban agriculture, which is now recognized as being vital to food security in cities. That this we need to recognize that. There also remain number of areas where progress in advancing gender equality has not been significant, and which represent challenges for the future. Even women, if they migrate to urban areas, they carry their knowledge related to agricultural activities, and they try to grow certain crops which could able to address the food security in the urban and peri-urban areas. But what are the challenges in this? Yes, women, they do contribute for various activities related to food production as well as the processing of food. In this scenario, what is the challenges the women face related to this specific sector? One is that lack of access to land. Second one is that resource entitlements and inputs such as credit and technology, and the limited role played by women in planning and formulation of policies. This is very important, since the representation of women in the policy making bodies are very low. They may not be able to formulate, or they may not be able to represent themselves in the policy making bodies to bring gender sensitive policies, as well as to address the women's needs in the policy making body to bring gender sensitive planning and policy making process. Another significant issues here we have to note it down is that the important role women played by women in agriculture was in the past largely ignored by the government. Specifically, their role, the contributions they made, it has not been documented. Thus, it has ignored in the large policy making bodies. This has slowly changing. Now, everyone is started recognizing the women's contribution in the agricultural sector. The situation has been changing in the past 1 or 2 decades. And women now, they are getting recognized in the agricultural sector in many parts of the developing world, including their contribution has been recognized in India. In this scenario, how do we address the gender inequality? First one is that we need to address the lack of access to land. That the government has to take appropriate measures to address the issues related to land resources. Second one is that credit and technology. Specifically here, I would like to bring in what a significant point is that the government, they have lots of extension workers. It is important for the government to sensitize the extension workers to contact the women farmers or even women agricultural workers to transfer the knowledge. Whatever the knowledge the extension workers they possess, they must transfer those knowledge to the small and marginal women farmers as well as women agriculture workers to strengthen the agriculture as a sector. That is very important. Mostly when you look into the extension workers, the percentage of the male percentage in the extension activities are very high. They may or may not be gender sensitive. It is the important for the government departments to sensitize all the extension workers to contact the women members to transfer the knowledge. And like most of the time what happens is that these agricultural extension workers, they rely on farmer groups, and mostly they do extension activities from farmer to farmer. If we don't recognize women as a farmer, then certainly it is not possible for them to transfer the knowledge to the women farmers. Thus, it is significant to make them gender sensitive and realize them that the farmer means it doesn't mean that only it's male members. Women, they do farming activities, and more than 60 to 65% of the agricultural activities are carried out by the female members in the society. Thus, they have to be gender sensitized and they need to transfer the knowledge to the women farmers, specifically small and marginal women farmers. That is very important. In this, a key focus on this approach is to enable rural people to secure sustainable livelihoods with an emphasis on income generating activities. That is more important. Women have traditionally earned valuable income through the processing of foods, as we all know that they grow certain kinds of vegetables and other food items. Whatever they produce, they could able to process it at the household level for their own consumption, as well as they could able to sell those processed food. But due to the lack of knowledge on basically due to the lack of scientific knowledge related to the market, as well as lack of cold storage facilities and package facilities, as well as it is difficult for the women to obtain the credit from the financial institutions. Specifically, they need to obtain credit from the bank and other financial institutions. Since the women lack resources, specifically land resources, it is not possible for them to get the enough financial resources to expand their food processing activities. Here, the government has to realize the constraints the women face related to food processing industries. Thus, they need to expand the cold storage facilities. They need to provide regular training to the women farmers, specifically small and marginal farmers, to provide information related to technology, as well as the scientific information related to food processing industries to expand their business. These limitations, whatever I have shared, these limitations needs to be addressed by the government through policies, and it needs to be thus once it addressed, once the government formulate the necessary policies to address these constraints, then women could able to expand their ability, specifically food processing ability, and thus they could able to process the foods and they could able to sell in the market. That is the another important. What are the gender issues and needs in agricultural sector? This we need to understand. As we all know that women are known to produce more than 60% of the world's food. In general, women provide 50 to 60% of the labor requirement, and this is increasing to 80% as far as paddy as well as rice production is concerned. So when we talk about the rice production, more than 80% of the activities are performed by the female members as far as rice production is concerned. Looking at their labor as well as looking at their contribution in the rice production, it is important for the government to acknowledge their contribution, and it is significant to acknowledge their contribution by the society and various social institutions, and that will, once we recognize and once we provide value to their contribution, then we could appropriately make necessary policies to reduce their women's drudgery as far as paddy and rice production is concerned. Another significant point here we need to understand is that on the account of large-scale migration of the male population to cities, more women are becoming functional heads of the both household as well as farming activities. This is the scenario in most of the developing countries, not only in India, most of the developing countries. Since the male members, they may not be able to get required employment opportunities in the rural areas, thus they tend to migrate to urban areas. Once the male members, they migrate to urban areas, by default, more and more women becoming the functional heads of the both households as well as farming activities. What are the 5 main gender issues as far as agriculture and rural development sector is concerned is that first one is the access to land and water resources and to credit and other support services. The government must ensure that the women, they have an access to land and water resources as well as they have a credit as well as financial support services from the bank and other formal financial institutions. That is the first significant gender issues as far as women are facing. Second one is that gender differences in roles and activities. As we all know that due to the existing patriarchy as well as socialization process, the society expects the male to perform certain kinds of activities and the female to perform certain kinds of activities. Due to the existing role differentiation between male and female, what happens is that the female not only do the reproductive activities, that is childbearing and child rearing, they expect to do the production activities as well as the societal activities. That certain activities the society expect the women to perform. Thus, they are doubly and triply burdened. These roles and activities, we need to recognize that the women, they do perform production, reproduction and societal activities. Once we recognize their roles and activities accordingly, we could able to formulate certain policies to reduce the drudgery of the women. Then gender and agricultural extension and research. Whatever the research, scientific research carried out by the scientific institutions specifically related to agriculture and related fields, that has to be transferred to the farmers. Thus, who will transfer those knowledge to the farmers? Basically, the extension workers, they do transfer those scientific knowledge to the farmers to improve the productivity in the agricultural sector. So in this scenario, it is very important to sensitize the extension workers to be more gender sensitive, as well as it is important for the extension workers to transfer the scientific knowledge to the women farmers, specifically small and marginal women farmers. Then women's empowerment and equal access to decision making. When it comes to agricultural sector, most of the activities, more than 60% of the activities are carried out by the women. And when it comes to food production, more than 80% of the activities are carried out by the women members in the society. In this scenario, it is important to provide equal access to decision making. Final point is about the gender, agricultural biodiversity and commercialization. There is an increasing privatization of community resources in the hands of the few. Since the significant resources are in the hands of the few, many of the women, they have a knowledge about the this significant knowledge about the biodiversity resources, and most of the time they conserve and they use in a very sustainable manner. This has to be recognized, and there are pressures to export and meet the strict quality standards when it comes to biodiversity resources. Thus the women has to be their capacity has to be built, and they needs to be actively involved in biodiversity resources to get enough benefit from the existing resources available in the community. I hope you could able to understand the significance of women's contribution in the agriculture and its allied sectors. This topic is related to the second year course MGSE 004 and MGSE 006. Thank you so much for listening this session.